I still dream about the sound, not the sound of the guns I've heard plasma cannons fire 1,000 times. It was the sound of reality tearing apart. It sounded like the universe itself was screaming. I was standing on the observation deck of the apex spire, looking out into the black, and I saw it happen. A wound in reality that bled a starship. It didn't warp in like a normal vessel. It just pushed its way through the fabric of space, matte black and so big it made our dreadnoughts look like toys. You think you know what power looks like. You don't. Not until you've seen a ship the size of a city erase a plasma bolt from existence just by deciding it shouldn't be there. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It didn't start with the screaming. It started with a boring Tuesday in the Null Meridian. That's where the apex spire floats, right in the middle of nowhere, the only place the 5 factions, Krell, Vex, Oregon, Alos, and Pyloch, could agree to meet without shooting at each other. At least, that was the theory. Inside the main hall, they were arguing about trade tariffs and mining rights. High Marshal Kyle of the Krell Empire was shouting, his scales rattling. Cirrus Alara of the Alos was looking bored, probably reading someone's mind just to pass the time. It was politics. Dull, grinding, endless politics. Then the sensors died. Every screen in the spire went red. We looked out the viewport, and that's when the Obsidian arrived. It didn't have engines, not that I could see. It just drifted there, geometric and terrifying, pulsing like it was breathing. High Marshal Kale didn't hesitate. He hates things he doesn't understand, and he really hates being afraid. He ordered a warning shot from his flagship. A blue lance of plasma, hot enough to melt a moon, streaked toward the black ship. That never came. That never came. The bolt didn't explode. It didn't bounce off a shield. It just stopped existing. 1 second it was there, the next it was gone, erased. Then the voice came over the comms. This is the Soul Coalition. We are here to observe. The panic in the room was electric. Cirrus Alara tried to scan the mines aboard the ship. I watched her eyes roll back, and then she screamed. She fell out of her chair, shaking, whispering about a storm. She said it was chaos-tamed, ridden like a wild animal. She said she felt organized emotion crashing against her like a tidal wave. Praetor Vaughn of the Oregon checked his scanners and went pale. He whispered that the ship's output exceeded a star. And then the doors to the main hall opened. She walked in, alone. Commander Elena Vance. No armor, no guards, just a uniform and a scar running down her face. She walked right up to the most powerful warlords in the galaxy and didn't even blink. When Kale threatened to vaporize her, she just smiled. It wasn't a nice smile, it was the kind of smile a predator gives you before the chase. She told them they had no idea what kind of death world she crawled out of. And then she turned her back on them. She walked out, and that's when the trap snapped shut. Kale, Vaughn, and Alara looked at each other and nodded. 3 fleets, 400 warships, all powering up their weapons at once. They thought they had her. They thought numbers meant victory. I watched Vance's shuttle dock with the Obsidian. I watched the enemy fleets move into attack formation, a wall of metal and fire surrounding that single black ship. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. I knew I was about to witness a massacre. I just didn't know whose it would be. They fired. All of them. It wasn't a battle. It was an execution. Or at least, it should have been. 400 warships opened up with everything they had. Plasma lances, kinetic slugs, singularity torpedoes. The space around the Obsidian turned into a blinding white sun. I had to shield my eyes, and I was behind 3 layers of polarized glass on the observation deck. The floor shook like an earthquake. I remember thinking, that's it. They're dust. No shield in the galaxy could take that kind of punishment. Not the Krell, not the Oregon. Nothing survives a burn like that. But then the smoke cleared, and there it was, the Obsidian. It hadn't moved. It hadn't buckled. The matte black hull didn't even have a scratch. It had just drunk the fire, absorbed it like water into a sponge. For 3 seconds, the entire Null Meridian went dead silent. You could practically hear the enemy captains holding their breath. Then the ship woke up. It didn't fire back. Not really. It released these streams of light, but they didn't move in straight lines. They curved. They bent around asteroids, looped over hulls, and split into a dozen different tendrils. It looked like a living nervous system made of pure energy. I watched a beam pass right through a Krell dreadnought's shields like they were mist. It didn't blow the ship apart. It just touched the weapon batteries. Pop. The guns went dark. It happened so fast my brain couldn't track it. In under 30 seconds, the Obsidian stripped 400 warships naked. It phased projectiles through armor to sever power couplings. It fried targeting computers, but left life support running. It was surgical disarmament on a planetary scale. When the light faded, the enemy fleet was drifting, dead in the water. And here's the kicker: nobody died. Not one single casualty. I checked the scanners myself. The Sol Coalition had just achieved total victory without spilling a drop of blood. It was non-lethal supremacy, and it was the scariest thing I have ever seen. The aftermath was chaos, but a different kind. High Marshal Kale was screaming into a dead comms unit until his own officers dragged him off the bridge in cuffs. He looked small, defeated. Praetor Vaughn just sat there, staring at his blank screens, realizing that his entire religion of might makes right had just been disproven by a ship that refused to fight. And Cirrus Alara? She looked peaceful. She finally understood. She told anyone who would listen that the humans weren't chaotic, they were beautiful disasters. They had turned their organized emotion into a weapon that broke swords instead of bones. Later, Commander Vance stood in the ruins of the diplomatic hall. She looked at us, at the shocked diplomats, the trembling warlords, and she dropped the truth on us. She told us about Earth, a high-gravity rock full of volcanoes and predators and storms, a death world. She told us they didn't come to space to conquer because they had spent 10,000 years just trying to survive their own home. "We don't kill because we have to," she said, her voice echoing off the walls. "We kill when we have no other choice." Today, we had a choice. I looked out the viewport one last time. The Obsidian was still there, a dark anchor in the stars. But now, small shuttles were moving toward it, not to attack, but to talk. Ships from minor species, the ones the empires had ignored for centuries, were docking at the apex spire. The blockade was gone. The war was over. Vance and her executive officer, a guy named Hux, stood by the window watching the traffic. They didn't look like conquerors. They looked like neighbors. I realized then that the most terrifying weapon isn't the one that can destroy a planet. It's the one that chooses not to.